Hi everyone, Ardyth here. Hope you're all having a great time at the summit now that we're starting to get into it, coming to the end of the day. Sorry, I just ran downstairs to get a UPS delivery. Just catching my breath. So, who's got some questions? Melinda, can you elaborate on your color coding system? I love color coding too. It's such an easy way to just visually make things easier to find. And I did pull out some of my pockets so that I could show you what I'm talking about. If you watch my video, you'll see I have a list of all the colors that I use. So in my pocket system, I have different colors, and they're just, all I do is I run a line of a Copic marker across the top. You can do it however you like, but it's nothing fancy. You could use colored cardstock if you wanted, if that might make it even easier to find them. And I just have different colors for different things. So I've got this kind of teal color for my alphabets, whether they're stamps or dies. I've got red for Christmas stamps. I've got pink for flowers. My stencils, I do use colored cardstock. So I've got gray cardstock for the stencils. For background stamps, you can see I use my pockets even for my red rubber stamps. For backgrounds, I've got yellow. This one's a new and exciting one for me. I'm so excited because now I have my embossing folders in pockets as well. And what that does is it allows me to keep any extra panels that I've already embossed right with the embossing folder. And those are orange. So I've been, those are all in my bins. So when I'm flipping through my bins looking for something, I may not know the name of it, but I know that it's an embossing folder. I know it's a sentiment set. Or if I'm flipping through looking for a sentiment, I know to go for a green card. So I find that quite helpful. Have you found any downside to storing all your supplies together like you do? Okay, so as you know, this is pretty new for me. I only did this earlier this year, and so far, no, I have not. I do have one limitation. Sorry, there's two limitations. One I talked about in my video, which was my big stencils, my 9x12 stencils, and my big circular stencils that I use with my Stencils 360. They wouldn't fit into the pockets. The other thing that I didn't foresee that also doesn't fit into the pockets is the 6x9 embossing folders from Spellbinders. You know, I love them because they're big, so you can, choose which part of the embossing folder you want on your panel. They don't fit into these pockets. But what I did was I just put them in the bins. I don't know if you can see my bins back there. I put them in the bins just on their own. So when I have to flip through to find one of them, I do have to look for the name on the actual embossing folder. I have lots of Stampin' Up! Stamps and dies that I keep in the cases because they're already labeled. Okay. So I think I saw Juliana's live just before, and she was talking about those as well. And I remember they're like thick DVD cases. I used to have a few, especially if they're wood block. I think they're unmounted stamps. They came in more like just thin DVD cases. It's hard to really advise you to take them out of those cases because they are so perfect for them. Maybe one thing you could do if you wanted to have them take up less space is double up. Maybe you could have two sets in one case. And then you'd have to somehow label the spine of the DVD case so that you knew what was in there. But I mean, you can't make those cases take up less space than they are. So maybe the best solution is to try and fit more in the cases if that's something that could work. How much time did it take you to set up your Airtable system? And how much time do you think it saves you on a daily basis? I've got my Airtable system in front of me open right now. I use it every single day. Um, as for how I'm a little embarrassed about how long it took me to set up, because when I was just about finished, I've got about 500 records that I put into Airtable. And just as I was about finished, I was telling one of my friends, and she said, "Oh yeah, did you notice how easy it is to transfer your notes from or Evernote to Airtable? There's a whole macro, or I don't know, automatic system to do it." I was like, "Well, I just manually input every single one of them." And I can't say that I regret it, because it made me really look at every single thing I had in this room and decide whether I wanted to keep it. And it also made me think about how I wanted to be able to find it. So even now, like I'm looking through, I was looking for some solid stamps, and I thought, "Oh, I wonder if I've ever used a tag solid." And I had, but only on about 4 stamp sets. So I was just looking through to see if I had any other solid stamps because of a technique that I wanted to try out. So I do use it every day. I would say I'm borderline at the amount of stuff that I've got. Like I said, I've got 500 lines in my Airtable. Um, I would say that's about borderline for whether it's just more efficient just to flip through and find it every time I want to look for something, or spend the time to set it up. Partly because I had Evernote, I was used to having it, and I enjoy using it. So it's not for everybody. If you've got less than what I've got, I would say it's faster to just flip through. If you've got more than I've got, then I definitely recommend. I know it is a time investment, but I definitely recommend the benefits of having it electronically. Eileen says, "What are in the front of your bins with the pretty different colors?" Those those are just inserts I made with my Stencils 360. You may not have heard about this tool. This is a tool that helps you work with circular stencils, and you use it and you turn the stencil by using the guidelines, and it tells you how far to turn the stencil, and then you can create these kinds of designs. So I created, they're all a full, like a full circular design, and I cut them in half to use at the front of my my bins there. So that's one of my favorite tools. If you like geometric type tools, it's a fun tool to look at. Kim says, "I think you use a Gemini Junior. I find it so frustrating with the warping plates. Do you have a solution?" I do. I have, actually, I have 2 solutions. One, one costs more than the other. So the solution that I was using that I found worked very, very well was, let me just grab the plates. I don't know if you're aware of these Gemini plates. These are called something like plates for double-sided die cuts. I have no idea what that means. I have no idea how you use them for that. But for what I used to do was I taped one of these onto my cutting plate. Actually, I taped 2 of them, one on each side of my cutting plate. And then I cut into these. So the clear cutting plate was sandwiched in the middle of these 2. And then I would put my die and my cardstock on top, and then I would put a top plate on top, like another cutting plate on top. And so it was like I had 2 pieces in my sandwich, plus my die and my cardstock, and I would run that through. No warping at all. Really great solution. I did have to replace these from time to time, but I could, first of all, before I replaced it, I could flip it over so that I was cutting on all 4 sides of the 2 green plates. The solution I have right now that I like even better is the iCrafter Magnetic Self-Healing Pro Deck. So it's a thick cutting plate. It's got self-healing coating on the top, and it's magnetic. So I don't have to use a lot of tape. and it hasn't warped at all. Sorry, let me grab that. Now, the problem with this one is I think it's like $65. It is not cheap, but that's like, I've been using that for almost 2 years, right? So you can see that there is some marking on the self-healing, but most of that would come off if I wiped it with a baby wipe. That's been a really great investment. Hi, Ardyth. More about AirTable, please. AirTable is an app that I was using at work, and it looks a lot like a spreadsheet, but it has more like database capability. So you can filter, you can sort things by different categories, and in fact, my freebie is a video that talks about how I was using Evernote, why I left Evernote, and then how I set up Airtable and why I set it up. And in fact, in yesterday's video on my YouTube channel, I talked a little bit more about how I'm refining how I'm using Airtable by adding more information so that I can go back and see what cards I've made with certain products. So yeah, definitely sign up for my freebie. And there's like a 5 or 7 minute video there talking about how I've set up my Airtable. Question, how do you store your markers? Everyone's asking this question. I store my markers. I have Copics, and I probably have about 200 of them. I was really into Copic marker coloring for a very long time. And I've kind of left that behind and as I've gotten messier in my techniques, and I'm doing a lot more ink blending and stenciling and things like that. So I've got about 200 Copic markers. I store them vertically. I have never had a problem with them, but I do understand how and why. If you store them vertically, the ink will settle to whichever end is on the bottom, and that could dry out the other end. So I definitely do see the benefits of storing them horizontally. There are lots of good solutions for storing them horizontally. Nikki this morning shared a really good solution. I looked at that on her I think it was her Amazon store. I looked at that to see what I thought of that, and what I do know is my Copics are in need of some TLC right now because they've been neglected for a little while. Barb Thompson said, what is the size of the envelopes they switched to? These are, I'm going to say they're 6x9. And one of the things I really love about it, quite often you see stampers and crafters, we store things vertically. And I really prefer having this wide opening. So I like these horizontal pockets so that I can easily reach in and grab. I find sometimes, when you're storing things vertically, you have to kind of reach in and they're tight, and then you pull it out and they're maybe stuck in or something. So I definitely prefer the horizontal orientation. Cynthia says, how do you store your paper? I do not have much colored cardstock. No, you can't see it. It's not in view here. I have mostly white cardstock, which I store in the reams. I store them flat. My specialty cardstock, I have pockets that are very similar to this, but obviously bigger, 8.5 by 11 or 9 by 12, whatever the size is. Also horizontal opening. And I have, like my gold glitter cardstock or my gold mirror cardstock, that kind of stuff. I have one, I don't know what you call those. Are they magazine holders? Those kind of, they're rigid but they slide in and they're on this shelf, but over that way. So I have one of those for my specialty cardstock. And I do have, as far as colored cardstock goes, I have some leftover colored cardstock from my old Stampin' Up! Days. I have red, which I keep for Christmas. I have navy blue because I always use that also at Christmas. And I have craft, and I have black and white. Those are the only colors I have. All the rest of my colored cardstock is gone. Kim says, have you removed rubber stamps from blocks? If so, how? I have. I haven't done it recently, but what I did back in the day, you can put them in the microwave. I would try it at 10 seconds. What you're trying to do is just soften the adhesive so that you can remove the stamp from the wood block. But obviously you don't want to melt anything. So, do it for 10 seconds. If that's not quite enough, do it for another 5 seconds. And then eventually you'll be able to take that off. There is stuff that you can buy. I think it's called Easy Mount, that is sticky on one side, and then that like cling. You know how cling stamps cling? So it's like that, but it comes in big 8.5 by 11 sheets, and you can put your red rubber stamp on that and then cut around it so that it can then be mounted on a MISTI or a clear block. Elizabeth says, how much does Airtable cost? I don't know. It's free up to 1,200 records. And as I said, I've got about 500 records. I've got Airtable pricing. So it's free for 1,200 records. Oh, sorry, 1,000 records per base. For $20 a month, you get 50,000 records. So if you are someone who has over 1,000 records, this may not be the answer for you. But I'm hearing there's lots of things out there. There's something called OneNote. There's lots of them out there. I'm sure in the chat there will be people who have lots of ideas. Stacy says, are you missing having more choices with only 4 bins, or does less is more apply here? That's a great question. I think it's easy. I should just speak for myself and not say we. For me, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking having more gives you more choice. I mean, think about your closet even, having more gives you more choice. I find making the choices the hardest part of creating. So if I can reduce the number of choices I have, then I can actually get on to creating. And then once I'm creating and I've started, then ideas come to me of maybe different colors, maybe different techniques. So I do not in any way feel deprived by having less stuff. In fact, I still think I can get this down further, but I do think having the 4 bins is pretty reasonable. Why Airtable, not Excel or Google Sheets? Elizabeth, that is because of the ability, and maybe it's my lack of knowledge of Excel or Google Sheets. Airtable has, I would say, stronger database capability. So I can insert I can what do you call that? What's the word? Define the column. I can make it a photo column. I can make it a date column. I can make it I don't think I'm doing Airtable any favors here by how I'm explaining this. The capability for searching, filtering, sorting is just it's much stronger than in Excel. The other thing that I'm really I learned something new about Airtable today. I was today years old when I learned this. You can't. This part I knew already. You can have a gallery view. And what that does is for every item that you have a picture for, that you've input a picture, it will come up with like a card. It looks a lot more like Evernote. So the picture of the item comes up first, and then all the information is below it. Okay, so that was one thing I knew already. What I was having trouble with was then when I was looking at the gallery view, the visual image view, I was having a hard time searching on it. And I was finding that I couldn't find things I knew were there. And I knew it was how I was using the search. So I Googled it, and it showed me how to use filters, and I can filter by tags. So now I can go into my, I can go into the Airtable, I can click on filter, I can add the condition, and it says if tag contains equals exactly, there's a bunch of different conditions, happy birthday. And then when all my happy birthday images come up together. When I was searching previously, what it would do is it would highlight each one, but I would have to kind of scroll through and see which ones were highlighted. And that was one thing I was missing from Evernote. So now that I found this, there's absolutely nothing that Evernote was doing for me that I'm missing from Airtable. May we see one of your bins? Do they contain stamps, dies, and stencils? Yes. Let me grab this one. Oh, they're not light. Okay, so I don't know how to best do this even. So there you go. I've got all my dividers, all my things, and you can see the colors. This is sitting on my shoulder. This is not very comfortable. So maybe that's better. I don't know. I don't know the best way to show this. But I mean, they look like everybody else's bins, except they're wider rather than tall. And one of the things I talked about in my video, and I'll see if I can find one, was where I had two smaller stamp sets. So this isn't maybe the best example, but like you can see, I've got a 4x6 stamp set here. I could put another 4x6 stamp set here, but in this case, since I didn't have another one from this manufacturer, I just put the die there. And then in the back, I've got whatever I've made and is left over. I was just going to answer that question. In my video, I talked about this. I am an accountant by trade. I like things where there's right answers. I like to know. So I tend to sort things alphabetically because there's no question. A comes before B, comes before C. So I sort by manufacturer, and that helps me not need to worry about those stamp sets. You know what I'm talking about, where it's a whole set of sentiments and it has every occasion in it you can imagine. You have no idea where to put that. And also, I don't want to have to remember the exact name of all the stamp sets I own. I can't remember them all. So that's where the color coding comes in. So when I'm looking for something, I come to the bin. I know I'm looking for, I don't know, what's one in here. My Say Thanks dies. So I go to Concord. I know they're Concord and Ninth. I flip through Concord and Ninth. I know that my dies have a gray line across the top, and then I can find them very easily. So that's kind of how my my system developed. What are the tab dividers? Okay, so these are plastic folders that I got at Staples, and then I trimmed down and I rounded the corners, and they fit into my old bins that were this wide. Back when I had the smaller pockets that opened from the top. And I didn't want to have to remake all of these. First of all, I haven't been able to find these plastic folders. But they're just, you could laminate cardstock. You could just use cardstock. You could buy the dividers from scrapbook.com or the stamp market. There's a lot of them out there, but I'm just reusing these from my previous system. Super techie. What field type do you use for your tags in Airtable? let me check. Tags. What's happening here? Multiple select. There you go. Multiple select. So then below there. So that's so that I can put more than one answer in there, because one stamp set may be tagged in 20 different ways depending on what all the sentiments are. Dorothy says, if you don't use colored cardstock, does that mean all your card bases are white? Generally speaking, my card bases are white. I like a white border around. So even if my card front is a really messy technique, I still like a nice crisp white border around it. But even if I do the whole panel, it's still on a white card base. Sometimes if I want a black looking card, I will still make it with a white card base, and then I'll put a black panel on top and then whatever my card front panel is. And that's just because it's much easier for someone to write in a white card base. Arlene says, so Airtable is an inventory. Yes. Sorry, Arlene. Yes. Airtable is, I'm using it. It's a great app for keeping track of things. I'm using it for my crafty inventory, and it's an alternative to what I was using before, which was another app called Evernote, which suddenly went from free to very expensive. When you used to store nesting dies on rings, did it damage the cutting area being metal on metal? I didn't have that problem. The only time, I have damaged dies, and the way I've damaged dies, you know how I'm using a magnetic plate. Sometimes when I put my paper and my die on top and I run it through, I didn't realize there was another die on the bottom. So sometimes they get damaged that way. I've had a couple. And another way is if I somehow, if the dies have moved, and this was not on a magnetic base, but if I've put my two dies through at the same time and they've moved and kind of jumped on top of each other, then I've damaged a die. But I've never damaged it by just storing it on a ring. Would you recommend an electric die cutting machine or not? Okay, I'm going to assume that you're saying electric or not electric. So I've got them both. I've got a Platinum 6 here, which is new to me, and I haven't quite, it works. I'm not at the point where I know how to make my sandwich without looking at the recipe, if you know what I mean. With my Gemini Junior, I know all my sandwiches without looking at the recipe. So I would say the only reason you would need an electric one rather than a cranking one is if you have a problem with the cranking motion, if you don't have a power socket near where you want to work, or, for cost reasons. Wow, that went so fast. Thank you so much for all your questions. I really enjoyed talking to you. Please leave any additional questions in the Facebook group, and I'll be sure to get to you. Follow me on YouTube, and thank you. Bye.